This is a hip circumference measurement point, and this is a his of half of an inch. Here is a point. Don't forget, I've reconstructed this part for you guys if you are making a straight dress. So for this reason, I'm not using this point, I'm using the exact measurement point. Okay guys, now I have the side seam connected, as you can see. So here is my connection from the waistline to the hip level. Make sure you have a very smooth connection like mine. Okay, then from the hip level downward to the dress length. So here is a straight line I drew out earlier, so I'm not making use of this because I don't want my dress to be a straight dress. I want it to be a pencil dress, so I'm crossing this out. So guys, after connecting the side seam, the next step is to work on the center back. Okay, so the first thing I will be doing is to add my zipper allowance. Don't forget, I told you I added my zipper allowance on the upper bodies. So for this reason, I will need to add my zipper allowance on the lower part of the dress as well. So from the waist point, I will be adding my zipper allowance downward to the dress length. My zipper allowance is 1 inch. So I'm extending the center back forward by 1 inch. So after marking this to the dress length, then I will connect the points together with my straight ruler. Okay guys, now I have my zipper allowance added from the waistline downwards to the dress length. Now I will be shaping the zipper allowance in order to match up with the shape I have for the upper part. So in doing this, I will take the measurement I have from the waistline to the hip level, and I'll get the midpoint, which is here. Then I will extend the points forward. Okay, so from this point I will measure half of an inch forward. Okay, so what I'm doing here is to remove unnecessary excess around the lower part of the waistline. Then I will pick this point and I will connect to the waist point, so which is the zipper allowance point I have on the waist. So this is the zipper allowance I have left on the waist after shaping the zipper area. So then I will connect this, the half of an inch point. These little details will make the dress to look good on the wearer. You can see the positioning of my ruler. The curvy side is facing towards the side seam. Okay, so now I have this done. So the next step is to connect from the half of an inch point to the hip level. This will push up the buttocks and also remove excess below the waistline. So I will connect this like so, and I will stop about 1/4 of an inch above the hip level. You can see what I have. Then I will pick this together in order to have a smooth curve. You can see what I have after shaping the zipper allowance. You can see what I have now is different from what I had earlier. Can you see this shape? And you can see this. So this is going off. If this is part of my dress, it's going to create a bulge at the center back. Okay, so the shaping I have at the center back is going to serve as different purposes. Number one, is going to remove the zipper bulge completely. Number two, is going to remove excess fabrics below the waist area. Number three, is going to push up the buttocks and the dress will not be tight on the wearer. Okay guys, after shaping the zipper allowance area, the next step is to insert the vent allowance. Okay, You can either make use of the 1 inch you have as the zipper allowance to serve as your vent allowance. That is, if you don't want your vent allowance to be closed, you want it opened. But if you want your vent allowance closed, you don't want it to be opened, then you will need to use up to 2 inches. So as for me, I want to use 2 inches as my vent allowance. I have 1 inch already, which is the zipper allowance, so I will be adding extra 1 inch to this in order to make it 2 inches, which means from the knee level I will be adding extra 2 inches to this to make it 2 inches. I'm using this 1 inch as the vent allowance purposely because the zipper will not get to the knee level. If the dress is going to be without a zipper, this has to be trimmed off after getting to the zipper point. Okay, so from the knee level I will add 1 inch to make it 2 inches. So from here, the center back to this point is 2 inches, and I will repeat the same process on the dress length points. So now I will be cleaning up the zipper allowance line, and I will draw a new straight line as the vent allowance line. So now I will be connecting the 2 points together to make a straight line. Okay guys, so far so good. We are done with the drafting of the back panel of our dress, and this is what I have for the back panel. You can see, so the pattern is now a single piece from the shoulder line downward to the hemline. Okay, so the next step is to trace out what I have on the upper part. I will trace it on the fresh pattern paper and also add my seam allowances. I have my seam allowances added from the shoulder line to the waistline already. Then I will be adding the seam allowance from the hip area downward to the hemline. When I was connecting from the waist point to the hip level, I mistakenly connected from the seam allowance point to the hip point. Okay, but I've corrected this. The connection has to be from the real waist measurement point, which is here, to the hip point. So what I have from this point to this edge is the seam allowance. So the seam allowance will be connected to the seam allowance. So now I will be adding my seam allowances. So that is on the hip level, the knee level, and the dress length. I added 1 inch of seam allowances by the side of the upper part of my pattern, so I will maintain the same 1 inch on the remaining part. So on the hip level, I will insert 1 inch of seam allowance, which I have exactly on this point. I joined a piece of pattern paper around this space. So on the knee level, I will insert 1 inch of seam allowance. On the dress length, I will insert 1 inch of seam allowance as well. So guys, now I have my seam allowances connected from the waistline to the hip level, then from the hip level downward to the dress length. And this is what I have for the seam allowance. Okay, so after adding my seam allowances, then I traced out the upper part of my dress on the fresh pattern paper. So I followed the shape I have by the side and I traced out the shape. So now that I have all this done, the pattern is ready and the next step is to cut it out. But before cutting this out, lest I forget, I will be extending the darts downward to the hip level. So in doing this, I will take the measurement I have from the center back point, not from the zipper allowance, from the center back point to the middle of my dart, which is the mid dart. So here I have 4.25. Then I will be inserting the same 4.25 on the hip level. Then I will make it a straight line. I will connect it to the mid dart line. Okay, so after having it like so, then I will measure 2 inches upward from the hip level. Then I will connect the 2 sides of my dart to the 2 inches point. Okay, so now I have my dart extended to the hip level. Now it's time to cut out my pattern, and I will separate my bodies from the new pattern. Then I will trace out my lines. Okay guys, now I have my lines traced out, and this is what I have. Now I can proceed in cutting out my pattern. Firstly, I will cut on the hem allowance line. So after cutting, I will fold in my hem allowance. Okay. So now here is my hemline. Then I will be cutting on the lower part. So here is my seam allowance line by the side. I will cut this like so. On the other side, excuse me. So now I can open up my hem allowance. So this is what I have for the hem allowance. So now I can continue cutting out my pattern. Now I'm cutting on the shoulder line. So here is the neckline area. So this is the back side of my pattern. So I will cut on the zipper allowance downward like so to the knee level. So when I get to the knee level, then I will cross it outward this way. Now I'm cutting on the side seam. Okay guys, here is the final look of the back panel of our dress pattern, and this is what I have after cutting. It is not necessary you grade the back panel first. Either of the two can come first. You can either grade the front panel before grading the back panel, or vice versa. But I decided to grade the back panel first for the sake of this tutorial, in order to simplify the whole process. Now I have this as a single piece, so you can decide to cut out your fabric like so, or slash your pattern into two, purposely because you want to get rid of your darts. You can either cut your dart or pick your dart. If you want to pick your dart on your dress, then you will leave your pattern like so. But if you want to cut out your dart, then you will have to slash your pattern. Now in this video, I will be showing you how to cut out your dart. So in doing this, I will take the measurement I have on the shoulder line, and I will get the midpoint. Okay, so after getting the midpoint, then I will connect the midpoint to the dart point. So not on the chest level, but the 1 inch point I measure downward on the chest level. So I will connect this together like so. Now I will come to the lower part of the dress, which is the dress length, not on the hem allowance line. Then I will insert the measurement I have for the dart intake here. So what I have on the knee level, from this point to this point. So from the center back to the dart point I have on the knee level, and I will insert the same measurement on the dress length. So that is 4.25. Okay, then I will connect the 2 points together. Okay guys, now the pattern is ready to be slashed. So I'll start from the hemline. I will fold in my hem allowance like so. And I will cut on the straight line. So you can see I'm cutting out my darts now. If you don't want to cut out your darts, you don't need to slash your pattern. Okay, so now I have my darts cut out. Can you see? So now I will cut on the shoulder line. Okay guys, now I have the back panel of my dress pattern slashed, and this is what I have after slashing. Okay, so this is the center side and this is the side seam side. So I will label this side as a dot line, this side also as the dot. Okay, so the next step is to move to the grading of the front panel.